I'm going to demonstrate the use of replaceable parameters. I've opened up a command prompt window. Let's begin by looking at the directory command. So here I just type in directory, and of course that gives me a list of all the files and folders in the current directory. Let's say that I only wanted to see those files that begin with the letter R. I'm going to use the directory command followed by R and the symbol for the wildcard, the asterisk, and now I can see anything that begins with R. I can do the same thing, let's say, if I wanted to see the files that begin with S. Again, S, the wildcard symbol, which means anything else can be there after the S, and there are two files. Right now I want to create a batch file that will do the same thing for me. So I have my notepad open, and in notepad I'm going to type in directory space and then R asterisk and of course enter, and that will now show me all those files that have an R, just like it did at the command prompt. I'm going to save this, and I'm going to make sure I know where it is. So I'm going to do File Save As, and I want this to be in my CSI 130 folder, which is where it is, and I'm going to call this search.dat and press Save, and now I've got that file saved. To run it, I go back to my command prompt, and remember, to run a batch file, we just type in the name of the batch file. So I type search, and notice that here it ran. There's the name of the batch file, and the command that was run was directory R star, which then listed everything that began with R. Now, if I wanted to use this batch file again to search just for those with S, I would have to come back to my batch file. I would have to change this to S. Then I'd have to save this again so that save is changed, or that change is saved. Then come back to my batch file, run it again, run it at the prompt, and now notice this time that it just searched for S's. But if I want a little more flexibility, what if I wanted to build into my batch file the capability to determine what that first letter should be? That's how I use replaceable parameters. So I'm going to come back to my batch file, and now in place of the S, I'm going to put a placeholder. So I delete the S, then I use the %sign and the number 1. That identifies this as the first replaceable parameter. Now I'm going to save this, and what this says is use the directory command on whatever value is included with the batch file. So let me demonstrate that here. I'm back here at the command prompt, and the name of this batch file is search, but now I've got to follow it with that value that I want to have in place of the %1 placeholder. And let's say that it was R this time. It's going to take that R and it's going to put it where that number 1 is. So I press enter, and notice how it performed this command using that R. You can actually see it in the results. Let's do that again. This time I'm going to do my search, and I'm going to put in S, and let's see what happens. It performed the search on S. Let's do it again. I'm going to do search, and this time let's say M. There were no files that began with M, so it gave me file not found. But notice how it took whatever I followed the batch file name with and put it in place of that number 1 placeholder. You can have more than one item using replaceable parameters. You just number them. So the first one would be number 1, and then you would, if you were doing another one, actually we can do that. Let's do this again. This time let's do directory, and we're going to do this one. We're going to call it 2. We're just going to follow the same pattern. And now I'm going to do save. So now when I type in the name of the batch file to run it, I've got to follow it with 2 pieces of information. Let's say we want the first directory listing to search on R, space, and the second one to search on S, space, enter. And notice how it performed this twice. It did the directory command once with the R, then it did it again with the S. I hope that helps you understand replaceable parameters.